Hi, welcome to my first ever book review video. And in this video we're going to be talking about a book called Storm for the Living and the Dead by Charles Bukowski. Now I recognize that starting off with Bukowski, if I should ever make more book review videos in the future, is probably not the best thing. If you don't know much about his work, you're probably going to get a lot of people talking about, how it's very smut-like, how it's, not, true classical piece of poetic work. There's a lot of negativity that surrounds Bukowski's name. But I think the reason for that is because most people who enjoy poetry are people who enjoy works like, Rupi Kaur or, R.H. Sin. There's nothing wrong if you enjoy those things, but if you're expecting that from Charles Bukowski, you have got another thing coming. Charles Bukowski was born in the Weimar Republic in 1920. Ever since then, he had a pretty tumultuous childhood. His family moved him to mid-city LA in the year 1930, and after the move, Bukowski found himself very, very shy, very socially withdrawn, and this carried on throughout his entire teenage years. One day he had an epiphany while he was introduced to alcohol from one of his buddies, famously saying, quote, "This alcohol is going to help me for a very long time." And that is essentially Bukowski in a nutshell. For the most part, his poetry discusses topics of alcoholism, life in the underbelly, life in a gritty side of town. People have often praised his work for being incredibly real and very, very down-to-earth, very realistic. Me personally, I find that so wonderful and fascinating because oftentimes we see way too much flowery language in the world of poetry. In a time when we had, T.S. Eliot and the Beat Generation, where everything was sort of flowery and heightened, you would find people like Bukowski to be a breath of fresh air because they just spoke the truth. And the most interesting thing about Bukowski is that he never really started publishing until he got older. For most of his life, he actually worked at a post office. It wasn't until he became an older man that he started actually, publishing his works and getting his name out there. So because this is the time when he starts writing, naturally a lot of his work sounds like a drunken, curmudgeon-y old man. But there really is a beauty in that, I think, because a lot of times people, in that sort of socioeconomic bracket are usually very misrepresented. They're either misrepresented or they're underrepresented in most forms of media. But Bukowski took the dirty old man trope and he made it famous. Despite this, I still think he was capable of large sums of depth and heartfelt emotion and tenderness. In fact, there's a poem from this particular work right here that I'd like to read to you guys that sort of emphasizes that point. It's called Mirror. Women at my dresser mirror. There have been so many women at my dresser mirror, combing their hair, the comb catching, and I see in their eyes in the mirror as they look at me, stretched on the bed. I am almost always on the bed. It's my favorite place. That love or even relationships stop seems so very odd. But that new loves, new relationships arrive, that's lucky. This book in particular has tons and tons of really powerful, deep, meaningful works of art. In fact, this work here is actually all of his uncollected and unpublished poems, stuff that took people a while to find. So if you're a Bukowski fan, this is definitely something very exciting for you. Maybe you've never read it before, maybe you'd like to see it, or you've just heard about it. But if you've read a lot of his stuff, it's more of the same. It's definitely more the same as it applies to other works that he's done, like, Post Office or On Love. If you're brand new to Bukowski, if you've never read a poem of his in your entire life, you need to give Storm for the Living and the Dead a try. And ignore the naysayers, because they don't know what they're talking about. This is true, genuine, raw human emotion and art in one of its finest forms, and probably one of the greatest poetic forms that I've ever seen in my life. So thanks so much for watching. I'm going to leave you guys with the poem that you can find on the very back of the cover of this book. It's called Blues Song. Pardon the territory of my grieving. It's improper, I know, maybe even hostile. But the bacon's burning, the bacon's burning. Tall knights armed with machine guns circle my dizzy and cowardly bed. The bacon's burning. So let's wipe our silly arses. Pretend that we are pleasurable, meaningful things. Isn't that the tune to try to beat the dirtiest trick of them all? Thanks again so much for watching, and if you have any suggestions for books that you would like to see me review, leave a comment down below. Until then, I'll see you all in my next video. Bye!